So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Danielle Edwards, Executive Vice President with Ipsos's online communities. Danielle, you have the floor.
Great, thank you so much, Ellen. So my name is Danielle Edwards. I oversee the online community practice at Ipsos, and I've been in this space for about 12 years now. So it's an area I'm very passionate about, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about what we are hearing coming out of our Fresh Lab syndicated community. Henry, if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So all of the research that we conducted today is coming out of our syndicated community. It has about 7,000 people in it, and they're profiled on many different variables and demographics, everything from where they shop, what retail categories they purchase in, cars they drive, and of course the traditional demographics like children in the home, household income, geography, that kind of thing. But the amazing thing about an online community is that members are engaged, they're ready to participate, they're very active, and we have the ability to reach out to them and conduct both quantitative and qualitative research with a variety of methodologies, from surveys to live chats to in-depth qualitative research. So for this research, we had about 850 holiday shoppers participate in both a quantitative survey as well as a qualitative discussion, where we asked them to think about their 2020 holiday shopping experience and how it'll be different this year. We also asked them to think about what they're looking for from different retailers. Are they going to be spending more or less this year in many different categories? Big ticket items they may be considering, and just kind of what the whole experience is going to look like this year for them. One thing to note about this research, it was conducted in mid-July, so the Delta variant of COVID-19 was definitely prevalent and in the news at that time. So just keep that in mind as we go through our findings. So holistically, what we heard is that there's a different feeling in the air this year. Members are definitely more optimistic this year. There's a feeling of hope. They are excited to reclaim the holidays. They miss that experience, the nostalgia, all of that, and they're really looking to go back to normal. However, there is still a lot of caution in the air. They are worried about their safety. Like I mentioned, the Delta variant is back in the news. So for some who, maybe were thinking that we had moved on from COVID, it's now back as a safety concern. And then, as they think about the shopping experience this year, it's definitely all about adaptation. It's making the best of the situation, regardless if they are able to go into stores, see family, or, shop online primarily. So I will deep dive into the first section of hope and reclaiming the holidays, and then I will hand it over to Henry. So really looking at, the shopping experience and the optimism and wanting to reclaim, the holidays, and what that means to them is, they're very slowly starting to go back into stores, and they're remembering what that feels like. They love to touch different items and see what the real color is and try things on to see if they fit. They really miss that tangible experience of shopping, as well as, finding different deals. So it's really the thrill of the hunt. It's, browsing through stores and walking up and down the aisles and, finding those things that, were unexpected or something that wasn't on your original list that they missed. So they missed that experience. And then it's really the holiday cheer. There's just, members were saying there's just like a feeling in the air around the holiday season. It's just being able to like get out of their house and get into a store and, looking forward to, the smells of the holiday season. It's the cinnamon and the pumpkin spice and the apples and, that whole kind of vibe that the holiday season has with the decorations. And then it's really just, like I said, a sense of normalcy. They're really looking forward to actually seeing people, their friends and family, and giving gifts in person this year. So, it's being able to see people unwrap the gifts and see the joy and the experience there, being able to hug their friends and family. So hope is really, the overarching thing that encompasses all of these things. They're looking forward to being able to be in the store and experience that holiday nostalgia and the vibe and actually see their friends and families. So then if we take a step back and we look at the shopper journey holistically, there really is no one size fits all approach. We're not seeing a lot of change here. It's the typical kind of process that shoppers will be following again this year. They are making lists, they're getting inspired early. Retailers definitely need to get out there early. We're finding, a lot of the members who participated in this project are already collecting lists from their friends and family. They're already doing some online kind of shopping to prepare. Some have even started purchasing gifts already. So be ready, because the shoppers are definitely already in the swing of it for the holiday season. And then, they're carrying forward a lot of the habits that they picked up last year as far as online shopping. So they're prioritizing, easy to get, lower priced products online. They're looking for those deals. And then the in-store shopping experience is really about that tangible experience. It's really getting to pick up the items and feel them and, see the texture of an item, a sweater or a gift or that type of thing, and really, soaking up that holiday season and the vibe. So if we dive a little more into the preparation planning process for this year, I think it's a little more key than some of the previous years. Shoppers are really, really making lists early. They're trying to put together a plan. They're getting wish lists from their families and really, really doing their research. One thing that we're seeing is that, pricing and spending is definitely still a concern. So while some people are following the revenge spending trend, several are still feeling kind of the pain of the pandemic. So that's one reason that preparation is really so key this year. And it's doing that research and making sure that they have the plan of budgets and what they want to get and where they're going to get their items. So then if you dive into online shopping a little bit more and what that means for shoppers this year, it's really the place for quick wins. It's really about convenience. It's really about price. It's checking for those deals. It's going to Amazon. It's going to Target, Walmart, those top kind of online retailers, and really looking for the promotions online and doing their due diligence. We did see a lot of shoppers start shopping online for the very first time last year due to the pandemic in several different categories. And Henry will dive into that a little deeper later, but a lot of them really plan to replicate that process this year because they were able to see different sales and promotions that they couldn't always find in store. And then if we look at the in-store shopping experience, it's some of those kind of fill-in trips. A lot of shoppers are looking to get their stocking stuffers there. They want to go in and they want to see and touch different items. It's really, like I said, about that tangible experience. They're heading to the store to get inspiration. They miss walking up and down the aisles. It's something that can't really be replicated when you're shopping online. You're not finding that inspiration and those kind of hidden gems that you find when you're just browsing a store. Also, the idea of really like going back to normal really came out here as well. It's the nostalgia of being in a mall again and smelling all of the Christmas smells. It's, taking pictures with Santa, not behind a plexiglass. It's really, being in the store. And there's one member said that the holiday season really has a vibe, and you can't have it without glitter and, all of the festive kind of decorations. So they're really looking to have that experience again this year and fill in on the different things that they can't get a better deal online, and really just to have that in-person tangible experience and the nostalgia. And then I'm going to pass it over to Henry, who will go through some of the other key themes that we found.
Cool. Thanks, Danielle. So even though shoppers really have this hope of trying to going back to what it was prior to the pandemic, that sense of holiday trappings, the sense of like feeling things, they do know that there's still this looming caution that's happening. And especially the case now with the Delta variant sort of building up, that, it just adds to another level of stress that the shoppers are feeling. So despite the fact, even sort of removing the Delta variant in this equation, there are consumers still being concerned the fact that the safety or the cleanliness in the stores. Are people going to be encountering large crowds as they're going to shopping in their area? Do they see vaccination counts increasing, or is it going to be steady? And then also just mentioned earlier, the Delta variant sort of coming in now, like that sort of puts into question a lot of the plans that people had planned in the beginning on how they plan to shop. So it's like, and originally it's like, well, we'll do a lot of online shopping early. We'll go in the store later, pick up some of the remaining items, and we'll sort of close out, a holiday shopping that way. But now with this new variable, this new variant coming in, it puts into question how people will be planning to shop moving forward. And we'll see that in the data. So when we talk to our members and ask them, what is sort of the thing that's really preventing them to having that full experience? What is that thing that sort of prevents them to really just forget about all the troubles that are happening around them and really sort of focus on the things that, bring them joy as they're putting, gifts together? It's really the large crowds and increased cases. That's to overwhelmingly be the thing that's sort of impacting folks and making that decision. They definitely want to come into that store and just they don't want to feel that stress in coming in and seeing the groups, large crowds and trying to navigate that, especially if there's a mismatch or a mishmash of people sort of masking or not masking, or even uncertainty if folks are even vaccinated. Obviously, you can't walk around with like a button saying I'm vaccinated and someone else saying I'm not, and figuring out how to separate themselves that way. But that's really sort of the biggest challenge. We do see some folks mentioning, at least when we sort of probed a bit more about what else are they concerned about. There's obviously financial challenges that store folks are experiencing, and also just items being out of stock. Knowing historically, especially when they're going to go to a store for a big deal, if they go there and try to find that item and they find out it's out of stock. So those are some other things that folks have mentioned. And this is really part of a larger behavior that we're seeing among our members. We had done research outside of our community that's collected within our coronavirus tracker, and we asked, and this was actually a week before we were doing the research, like, is the Delta variant being something that will impact them in what they will do? And a little bit more than half already said they're going to do a lot less of going to crowded places. So it's not just something that is impacting shopping, but also just impacting their overall behavior. But not everyone sort of feels that way. Obviously, the vaccination will have an impact on how folks make a decision on where they will be going and how they will sort of participate in the holiday shopping. So what interesting we see is that folks actually have some preference to vaccination, whether they plan to be or have already been vaccinated. They're the ones that sort of drive the concern of large crowds and increased cases. So despite the fact that they're vaccinated, that's still a concern for them. Conversely, folks that are not planning to be vaccinated, have no interest in doing so, many of them don't see that as a barrier. So things like just large crowds, increased cases for them, they will continue to shop regardless. And for some, they actually consider a lot of the safety precautions that stores may enact as being a barrier for them. You'll see folks may wanting to go to the store and not to be forced to be wearing a mask. That's something they're not going to be interested in doing. So that does become a driving factor for a lot of folks in a decision whether how they feel about being vaccinated or not, or whether they choose to not to be. And that really cascades down to their shopping behavior. When we took a look at where they do plan to spend their money for holiday shopping, folks that have been vaccinated or plan to be vaccinated overwhelmingly lean towards online shopping, or in some cases doing both, especially for items that might require sort of a tactile feeling when it comes to like, health and beauty or household items. They really lean more towards online shopping. While it's not overwhelming, it sort of skews in that direction. But when you look in comparison to those who don't plan to be vaccinated, they lean a lot more towards in-store shopping or a mixture of both. They have that preference of kind of going into the store to pick out the items and shopping, and obviously that ties a lot towards the holiday trappings and actually feeling and touching the products and trying them out. Regardless of whether folks are choosing to be vaccinated or not, there is their sense of like push and pull, or a sense of feeling that one method or the other doesn't really fully satisfy their shopping experience. For folks that sort of look towards online shopping, they like the ability to have wide selection, because of the wide selection gives them more comparability. As Danielle mentioned earlier, they feel that they'll get lower prices that way. And especially for folks who have concerns about the pandemic, going online means that they don't need to be exposed to the coronavirus, be around large crowds. And also they just have a sense that they'll get a limited selection if they go to one store, where as opposed to online, you get a much wider selection. If you look to the other side, when you look at in-store shopping, the preference really leans more towards that wishful thinking, that hopefulness of the in-store experience. They want to touch the sweaters. And actually what's interesting, we actually see is that a lot of folks, like you mentioned, that going in store, you get that sense of idea generation. You're able to sort of come up with thoughts as you're walking in the store. You think about someone walking down the aisle and they'll see, that one sweater that they want to purchase, but on that sweater is a button-down shirt under it and there's a jacket around it. And those give the ideas of other things to purchase. And also just browsing up and down the aisles, really unsure of what to get something for someone, they'll get that inspiration as they're going into the store. And the other part is really more the intangible part, the being engrossed in the holiday spirit. Folks had mentioned that while they like getting items online, there's no sense of ritual, no holiday experience that they get from going to the store into a mall, whether it's the smells, whether it's the holiday music playing in the background, whether it's just seeing the reds and the greens that sort of pop as they're going into the store. It puts them in sort of a mindset of buying holiday gifts that they don't really get from getting online. But regardless of the challenge that they face in the coming months, especially as the Delta variant becomes sort of a bigger thing to be concerned about, shoppers are going to be finding ways to compensate, to adapt to what is going on. For some folks, they are planning to shop more. It's really more a small group of people that sort of feel that way, but they definitely were vocal in saying that they plan to buy more this year than they have in the past, just to make up for what they had lost last year. For others, everyone has different benchmarks on what it means to make things special for them. So they're going to sort of look internally and try to make it beyond that, whether it's more decorations, whether it's more music, whether it's going to be, starting even earlier than usual. They're going to find certain ways to adapt so that way they can still get that holiday experience that they may not have gotten, especially last year, and trying to meet as much as possible to previous years. So what does that look like this year? How are sort of shoppers planning to adapt? We asked them first, really, how do they plan to shop? What is their behavior going to mirror when they start shopping, if they've already started or planning to in the future? For most folks, they're actually thinking they're going to be shopping similar to how they had done last year than they had done the years prior. And it's pretty consistent regardless of what category they're going to be shopping for. So how does that look like? For the most part, shoppers are going to be leaning more towards online shopping, or maybe some mixture of both, especially for much more traditional holiday shopping categories, books, electronics, toys, and jewelry. They'll be leaning more towards online to do that. Interestingly, and this came from a separate research that we had conducted at Ipsos, is that at the beginning of the pandemic, at least 40% of the online shopping actually came from first-time buyers, especially for categories such as cosmetics, electronics, and groceries. So this suggests that a lot of the people that are going to be buying holiday shopping now had just started doing this more generally, not specifically holiday, but just generally at the start of the pandemic for the first time online. So that becomes a new source for folks to sort of look to find the products that they're wanting to purchase. When it comes to spend, though I did mention earlier that some folks do plan to purchase a lot more, it's a small percentage, again, though vocal, it's for the majority of folks who probably be spending similar amounts as they did last year. And when they're looking towards where they want to go shopping, which retailers are going to be looking towards, as Danielle mentioned earlier, price is always going to be sort of the biggest motivator for them to make that decision. But interestingly, as we collected from a separate research, the convenience of the shopping is going to be a big thing. And you want to think about, someone who's going to be wanting to go to the store, they want to have as minimal headaches, stressors as possible, especially this year in comparison to previous years. So anything that makes things easy for them, whether online or in person, is going to make them feel much more comfortable shopping there. And I'd imagine that this will be something that's very apparent for shoppers when they go in specifically going into stores. And we'll take a look at that in some of the verbatims we had seen from the Black Friday question that we actually asked in the end. We asked our members, if you were to sort of identify which store, which retailer actually provides the ideal shopping experience, especially given the circumstances there are now. Not surprising to sort of mention the big box stores, but I think what's much more interesting to call out here is that each of these stores provided one aspect of that experience, but not the holistic one. So for example, for Amazon, they love the idea that they're able to sort of compare prices and actually find hard to find items. Amazon obviously sources multiple retailers through their website, so that means that they're able to find really hard to find items, especially if it's coming from lists from their family members. And that convenience comes in as well. They're able to sort of order online, have it delivered, and have less of a stress in that experience. But it's not really entirely ownable from them. For example, we look at Target. People actually like the idea of going into Target because they get the inspirations from shopping for gifts. And also, to some extent or another, they almost feel there's a family experience coming in there. They want to bring their family in there to do shopping, especially if they're trying to pick out items that relate to the family members that are there. It's like, what items do I want to get for my kids or for my cousins or for my nieces or nephews? And then Walmart, they sort of fit in a separate niche where they're so prevalent around the US that they become seen as more of a convenient location for them to go shopping, on top of the fact that they tend to provide deeper discounts in their products. So overall, it really just means that each retailer, or even others are not listed here, really give a different aspect of preference and trying to address at least the price, value, and convenience as best as possible, or communicate as best they can, will really help to bring in the shoppers to come in and visit the stores, or whether in-store or online. So what does that mean for this year, for the next couple of months? We actually had set up an interesting activity among our members. We had asked them, if you were to write a letter to Black Friday, what would you like to tell it? We didn't really give any guidance, any direction on what that would look like. We really just said, what would you want to write to it? And the themes that you see here, and I'll call out, were very consistent across our shoppers and our members. They definitely wanted a much kinder experience. They're obviously thinking back to the past of, prior pandemic with people lining up in stores and, rushing in to buy items and people sort of getting crowded and, having altercations. They want to avoid that, even more so now. Relatedly, they don't want to have less crowded stores. They don't want to be on top of each other trying to pick out items. On top of that, they don't they like the fact, some folks like the deals that exist within Black Friday, but they don't want it to sort of creep into Thanksgiving. People are looking forwards to having more traditional holiday experiences, including Thanksgiving, especially when they might not have had it in the past. So anything that sort of avoid impacting that experience will help to sort of have them have a much better holiday experience. Additionally, they feel that some of these deals could really extend beyond just one day. Obviously, the Black Friday experience really sort of motivates folks to sort of take advantage of that deal on that day to get maximum impact. But they would love to have these offers and deals sort of extend. Relatedly, when it comes to stock, to make sure to have these products available when they come in. So if they see something on sale, they'd like to not be disappointed in not finding the item that they're looking for. We did see one thread actually sort of flow across many of our consumers, regardless of if they were interested in Black Friday or not, that they would be okay if Black Friday took a day off. They would have been fine having some of these deals just exist throughout the year and not have sort of this one-day ritual of coming in to get the discounts, whether it's online or in store. They would love the fact that it sort of exists at their convenience, whether it's on Black Friday or any other particular day. So we'll stop there. We can open it up to questions. And I guess we'll turn our cameras on.
Okay, I'm fielding the questions, Henry. So it looks like we've had a few start coming in. So first one, did you notice any age or geo splits when it came to online versus in-store preferences, or splits among any of the other demos you can share?
Let me think. We did take a look at some of the demographic information. I think one of the things that stood out for us, well, one was obvious, is that we see a lot more of the online shopping coming from folks within 25 to 54-year-olds, I think. What would have been nice, I think, to see the comparison, but what was interesting that did come out was that despite the fact that consumers that were, let's say, 55 and plus, we would have expected to see lower holiday shopping overall, especially in comparison to the other age groups. The hypothesis is that regardless of they were low, it was actually higher, let's say, in comparison to previous years, especially since we did see a lot of folks online shopping for the very first time during the pandemic last year, that we expect a lot of them to be sort of continuing that habit, even though, let's say, comparably to the age groups, would be a little bit lower.
Cool, very interesting. Let me see what else we have here. Any tips that you have for an online-only retailer this season?
Good one. I guess because we talk about folks wanting to have the holiday experience coming, especially because they would want to get it in the store, when it comes to like the smells and touches, I would imagine that it might be worth, some website designs that would bring in the holiday experience. You think of decorations, you think of, maybe, I don't know, music or into that effect. I don't have any background in web design whatsoever, but I'd imagine that anything that sort of flags that experience would be good. I'd wonder even if you would send like holiday samples, like scents that may be included. Maybe that's something that might be worth. But again, anything to sort of think about that would really try to connect holiday experiences where you may not be getting it when you're not in stores.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually a fun idea to include some sort of like holiday scent or something like that in the package that they receive at home, because it kind of brings that nostalgia of the in-store together with it. So
yeah.
Okay, one more here. Let's see. How should we think about what and how to communicate to our shoppers during these challenging times?
I think
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing. I think building off of what you said with the caution idea and people being, cautiously optimistic, wanting to go into stores, but still with the Delta variant and unsure, I think it is super important still to kind of reassure shoppers that are nervous or on the fence about, that things are being cleaned on a regular basis, that they are, minding the CDC guidelines and all of that. I think that's sort of a no-brainer, but it's something that should still be top of mind and, kept very prevalent.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has to be a sense of trying to promote the holidays, but still being sensitive of what is going on. There's definitely a delicate balance. That way there's a sense of understanding and sensitivity in what is going on.
Cool. And then here is another one. They're asking, in your research, did you find anything related to how parents will shop for their children? We saw in our research last year that parents were COVID compensating, so buying more expensive, buying earlier. So wanting to see how does that track for this year?
Well, we didn't necessarily ask any questions specific for parents. However, I would suspect that at least surmising from some of the data about spend when it comes to just list gathering, that they're going to be wanting to be, I guess, very precise on what they plan to purchase. Like anything that they can help them in shopping and be less guesswork, especially if they're going to be doing it online, would be ideal. So I think if they're able to go in the store, they'll get the inspiration. But if it's online, it'll be probably, they want to be, I guess, conservative is not the word, but more really just plan well enough to purchase and be very particular on what they want to getting, where it might be, you sort of want to think about if they're buying things online, just maybe on random, that returns might be an issue. So they want to be very correct, let's say, in what they want to get.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think there is the tight alignment with the lists, but we were seeing, not necessarily that trend of revenge spending tracking here, where they're going to spend more. Henry did show that people were planning to spend, about the same, some a little less, some a little more, but the idea of kind of going up over and above and overcompensating is not as prevalent this year. Okay. And then here's a question around the clothing category. Did you see any importance around holiday dress up or holiday occasions and gatherings?
Not specifically to that, but at least from the data that we've seen, that where folks are sort of looking forward to a much more normal experience, at least, as best as possible, they're probably going to be wanting to, again, trying to take advantage of that as much as possible. There's probably going to be questions about what holiday gatherings will be happening. And I would think that folks will be making that decision as close to the date as possible before making any purchases, because they want to keep an eye on Delta variants, vaccine counts, COVID cases. If all of a sudden, let's say magically everyone sort of gets vaccinated by November, and then, the cases drop significantly, I would suspect that folks would be leaning more towards, dress up for holiday occasions. So I would think that folks would be a wait and see at this point and see how things progress, knowing that right now in July, all of a sudden the Delta variant sort of picked up. Who knows what's going to happen in October, November, and December?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So similar to that, we have a question around any insights around the food or dining behaviors for the holidays.
So I think I didn't call it out in the data, but at least I didn't call it on the slides, but we did see that folks are dying to go back to the restaurants if they haven't already done so. So they do plan a lot more in restaurant dining in the future. That may come into question as the Delta variant sort of picks up, but there's definitely people desiring less online ordering for delivery restaurant orders and more of like in-person dining, especially if for much southern warmer weather areas where you can sit outside. But overall, I think people are going to be looking forward to that in the coming months, especially in the holidays.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think a lot of people were missing the, holiday parties in restaurants, like all of those types of things. And I know a lot of families mentioned that their tradition used to be to go out to eat for, Thanksgiving or those types of things. And I think a lot of the people are missing that this year and I'm really hoping to do it. So next question. Were there any types of retailers, types of brands, or particular retailers, brands that your respondents said that they will shop at less this year? And if so, did they mention why?
We didn't see any particular brands that less of. I think we were sort of focused on where they plan to go. But I would say that, at least surmising from the data about what folks are looking for, if there are brands that sort of don't address the convenience or especially the price value, that's probably going to be where they're going to sort of move away from. So sort of think about what the shopping experience should be, whether online or in store, and sort of try and if they're not addressing those conveniences or price value areas, then that's probably going to be where the warning is going to be.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that while we didn't ask about specific brands, Henry demonstrated that like no one retailer kind of does it all, and the key things that they're looking for are convenience and price. So if you're going to do well in that area, that's where people are going to shop. And if you don't, I would imagine they would spend less and shop less there.
Yeah, and there's probably table stakes when it comes to certain things, when it comes to convenience, but I would say that there's probably various ways that brands can sort of define convenience for their shoppers depending on what they provide. So I wouldn't say for sure like it has to be these things, but as long as you're sort of talking about convenience, that there's at least some way for a brand to succeed. So I wouldn't box them, but I definitely sort of consider that as like, what's the theme for convenience for your brand?
Yeah. Okay, another sort of food-looking related question. So it says, last year we saw a big boom in holiday baking, building on the sourdough culture. Do you think it will be more, less, or on par with 2020?
Ooh, and I did not get on the sourdough bandwagon though, so I missed that one. I looked online, like it seems like a lot of work.
It seems too hard.
That's a really good question. I would think if I'm thinking, let's say like if I'm sort of tying it to the restaurant data, people might be just tired of doing some of that. I think there might be folks who still want to do it. I wouldn't say this is a blanket response, but I wouldn't be surprised if folks sort of just not want to do it this year because they might have done it so much last year. Mm-hmm. But who knows? Maybe they may see something on TikTok or Instagram that sort of motivates them, this new baking trend, and they'll just pick up all of a sudden. I mean, at least for me, I went back into the grocery store a couple of weeks ago, and now I've now discovered these complete cookie setups. So basically everything's in there except for butter and an egg. So as long as I basically have room temperature butter and egg and mix it all together, it comes with like the flour, the sugar, the chocolate chips. It is the easiest cookies I've ever made in my entire life. I'm now hooked. So who knows? Maybe you'll find something that's like that works and just go for it. So maybe going back to that convenience aspect, anything that's easy for them to do will sort of like they'll gravitate towards. I think that'll be less. People may want less like labor intensive type of food products.
Yeah, I think it also will depend a lot on, how the world is at that time, because, if we look back to the earlier question around, eating out in restaurants and that type of thing, like if restaurants are closed and you can't go pick up, desserts somewhere else or go out and have that experience, people may tend to, broaden their horizons again and come up with new baking ideas and experiments and try a new thing just so they have something to incorporate in that they wouldn't maybe normally have.
Are you suggesting they're adapting? That seems to be it, right? Yeah, they're all adapting. That's absolutely right. Everyone's having a different experience, so anything that they can adapt to will really they'll gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Let's see. So we have a couple questions here that are sort of similar. So they're around the gifting experience and how people will think about that this year. So being asked about any data on the gifting experience rather than a tangible gift. And then someone also asking about holiday travel. So those kind of tie together and what that looks like if people are going to be traveling further or if it's going to be local, and as well as like gifts that are other than a tangible gift.
I think from the travel, that might be worth something for us to look into down the line. I think I would suspect that similar to sort of maybe the holiday dress, there might be a wait and see approach for folks when deciding what to travel. There might be folks who's like, I'm vaccinated, as long as the rest of my family is vaccinated, we'll do it. We didn't look into it very specifically, but that might be something for us to sort of look into further.
Yeah, and then as far as gift giving, beyond like a tangible gift, more like the experience idea. Do you have any thoughts on that?
At least from the responses we've seen in the verbatims, most of the folks were focused on like shopping for tangible products. We didn't really probe on whether it should be tangible. If we made, I guess we didn't give them an idea of like, would you consider non-tangible products? I would suspect, especially because maybe some of these experiential require being around other people, that might be a concern for some people. It might be easier just to give them something that doesn't require them being, let's say tour guides or like, cooking classes or something to that effect. But that I would, at least from the data, without prompting them, they're leaning more towards sort of tangible products.
Yeah, and I think that maybe ties into the cautiously optimistic, that they're kind of waiting to see. They're not exactly sure what things are going to look like in December or January, and if a more experiential gift would make sense. So they're leaning towards the tangible experience that they can kind of be more familiar with.
Yep.
Let's see what else. And then another question around shopping through social. So was there anything coming up around people shopping through social, TikTok, Instagram, anything like that in the research?
We didn't dig deeply, but I think that might be a good follow-up question for us to look into. I know we definitely had some verbatims that might have referenced that in particular, but I'd say that might be something for us to sort of follow up afterwards and maybe look into.
Okay, great. Just trying to spin through. Okay, I think that's actually all of the questions that we have for now, unless anyone has anything else. Thank you all for joining. We will absolutely follow up. If you have any other questions, you can email us, and this is being recorded, so we will send out a copy to everyone who attended. So thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Danielle. That now concludes today's Ipsos webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, Elena. Bye, all.